All right, so we are still on chapter 8, and we are now moving on to section B, which is just going to be finding the midpoints of a line segment. All right, so we'll talk about this in more detail in a second, and hopefully it kind of just makes sense when we're saying the midpoint, when we're talking about the middle point of a segment. But what our objectives are is for you to understand and know how to apply the midpoint formula. So understand how we're generating the midpoint formula and then how to use it. And then also you're going to be able to find a missing endpoint when you're given one of the endpoints and the midpoint. All right, so that's what you need to be able to do by the end of this video. This video should hopefully be very quick. Just going to discuss a few things, and there's two examples that we're doing. All right, the first one is, what is a midpoint? Well, a midpoint, the midpoint of a line segment is a point which lies midway between the points A and B. So in this segment, it's A and B, but it could be any endpoints for any of the segments that we have. But it's just it lies midway between the two endpoints. And when we're talking about midway, we're talking about right in the middle. And if you think about what we did when we were talking, when we were just doing the median, when we were talking about the median being right in the middle, and if we had two different numbers that generated that median, we had to take the average of those two numbers. So this needs to be right in the middle. And in order to be directly in the middle between these 2 points, it needs to be the average of our two endpoints. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our formula. So as I said that it needs to be the average, so when we're finding a midpoint, because we're dealing with a coordinate plane, we are going to have 2 points in our midpoint. We will have an x value and we will have a y value in our midpoint. So in this case, our x coordinate of our midpoint is the average of the x coordinates of A and B. The y coordinate of our midpoint is the average of the y coordinates of A and B. So when we're taking the average of two numbers, we need to add them together and divide by 2 since we're dividing or adding two different numbers. So the midpoint formula is this here. It's x1, so the x value in one of our endpoints, plus x2, the x value of our other midpoint, divided by 2 because we need to take the average of them. And then for our y's, it's the same thing. It's y1, it's our y value of one of our endpoints, plus y2, our y value of our other endpoint, divided by 2 because we're taking our average, right? And that will generate our midpoint of our segment, right? So this is the formula that you need to know how to use. x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. All right, so let's go ahead and do this real quick. So here I give you the points, A and B, where A is -2, 3, and B is 4, 8. And I ask you to find the midpoint of them. So the first thing that you will do is you will write down your formula that our midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. All right, then from here we are going to denote which one is our x1, y1 and which one's our x2, y2. It doesn't matter. You can choose A or B, but what it is, as we talked about in class the other day with our distance, is it's all about consistent. So it will be x1, y1. So if I make this my x1, this has to be y1. It can't be y2. And that means this is x2, y2. Right? I could have made this value x2, y2. It doesn't matter. It's all about being consistent. But since I chose this to be my x1 and y1, I'm now going to just plug it into my formula. So it's going to be equal to my x1, -2, plus my x2, which is 4, and divided by 2. My y1, which is 3, plus my y2, which is 8, divided by 2. And then I will just go ahead and finish this off by doing the computations. -2 plus 4 is going to give me 2 over 2, and 3 plus 8 is 11 over 2. And then we just simplify our fractions as much as we can. Honestly, I don't care how you leave this fraction. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that one must be simplified. But you can leave this as 11 halves, or you can write this as 1 and 5 and 1 halves, or you can write this as 1 and 5.5. I probably prefer for you to leave it, or not probably, I do prefer for you to leave it like this of all those ways. But if you want to write it as 5 and 1 halves, that's better as well, or not bad as well. But I probably wouldn't ever write it as 5.5 because in the future, I don't think your teachers would really allow you to write it like that. But either way, for now, as long as you're showing me you know how to do the midpoint formula, they're all acceptable for right now. All right, there's one more example, and that's it for this video. All right, now for this question, it gives us the midpoint. It says our midpoint is 1, -3, and now it's asking us to find the endpoint our coordinates of one of our endpoints Q. So remember, our midpoint formula is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. But in this case, we know our midpoint. Our midpoint is 1, negative 3. And since I know one of my endpoints, I'm just going to label this x1, y1. You could label it x2, y2 if you wanted to. I'm just labeling it x1, y1. So then that means I'm going to plug what I know into my formula for right now. It'll be 3 plus the x2 I don't know over 2. And it'll be 1 plus the y2 that I don't know for now over 2. Now, when we do this, what we need to do is we need to create two separate formulas. We are going to find our x point, our x value, and then we are going to find our y value. And what we do is we take this here, generates this 1. So that means this 1 is equal to 3 plus x2 divided by 2. Because we know that this x average gave us a 1 as our midpoint. And then this value here generates this negative 3. So I can create this equation of negative 3 is equal to 1 plus y2 divided by 2, because I know the averages will give us negative 3. Right? Now we have an equation that we should all be able to solve. I'm dividing by 2, so I multiply by 2 to get rid of it. So now I get 2 is equal to 3 plus x2. And then to solve for this x2, I will say minus 3, so negative 1 is equal to x2. And then from here, the same thing is being divided by 2, so I will then get rid of the division by multiplying. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So negative 6 is equal to 1 plus y2. And now I will go ahead and subtract over this 1 to isolate my y2. And I get negative 7 is equal to y2. So now I figured out what my midpoint is. What my endpoint. My endpoint Q is equal to my x value was negative 1 and my y value was negative 7. Right? So that is my answer, negative 1, negative 7. If you wanted to, you can check your work by plugging it back into our original midpoint formula. 3 plus negative 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Check. 1 plus negative 7 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Check. So you can check your work. All right? That is it for this video.